Let's go to Danny in Epsom. Danny, good morning to you. Thanks for calling.
Nick, how are you? Good to hear you again.
Well, that's very kind of you. Even better to hear from you. What would you like to say?
Well, I think it worries me, and it should be worrying everyone out there. I think we've got Keir Starmer, who we don't know much about. What we do know is that he thinks that Corbyn would have made a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson, which is obviously ridiculous. He hasn't really told us much about his policies. He hasn't told us how he's going to stop the boats and bring legal migration down. I think the reason he hasn't mentioned it is because he isn't, and I think we're going to see the perpetuation of mass immigration into Britain against our wishes. And I think he's basically going to win by default. My worry, Nick, I guess, is that he's a socialist radical wolf in sheep's clothing, and he wins by not saying anything.
And that is his so-called Ming vase strategy, Danny, that he's coming in on that score, which is really worrying because, you know, when he's pressed on things like tax, he fails the test. When he's pressed on detail, he doesn't give it. And yet, it's the Tories to blame for this, surely. They've just made this all possible.
Yeah, they did make it possible. I mean, but the thing is, if you own a house, we know he's probably coming for some form of capital gain tax on your house, okay? And you know that if you've got a car, he's probably going to be putting fuel duty up in some kind. If you look at where Labour, the 14 worst run councils in the country are all Labour run. You've got London and Wales, which, I mean, are run abysmally. They're all Labour run. Why does anyone out there think that voting Labour's the answer? It's not. And the thing is, the Conservatives deserve all they get because they're no longer a party of the right. I am one of, I think, probably 10 million people that are going to vote for reform because I'm not left with any choice.
Let's pick up this point with my studio pal today, Danny, so hang in there. Candice, it's people, Tories have let Labour sleepwalk into number 10. That's what Danny's basically saying. Yes. And they're going to reform. Does that sum it up?
It seems to be. I mean, I think that what the Conservatives are really suffering with right now is people are angry with them, but they're not exactly enthused with Labour.
That was clear last night in the debates, wasn't it? They were quite cross with Keir Starmer as well.
And I think Keir Starmer is going to start falling apart when he's pressed on a lot more of what he's planning because they have been studiously vague. Labour have been studiously vague about so many things.
It's a clever tactic. It's working.
It is. He's sort of like successfully pitching himself as the moderate Labour leader, and he's trying to detoxify the Labour brand. But it is so true. They're not saying which taxes that they might be raising, and everyone has a strong sense that things like capital gains tax are going to start coming in.
Yeah, well, and actually they've left a vacuum there. So, Danny, you speculate, they might put capital gains tax on your private house, they will complain about that. But the point is, by not saying what they're going to do, they've left themselves open to these charges, haven't they, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I'm pretty certain that Great Britain is going to be much worse run by a Labour government. I mean, the proof's in the pudding. You know, like I've just said, that everything they run turns to you know what. If you own a house, they're probably going to tax you on it. They're probably going to come after pensioners with money. They're probably look at the green restrictions in the ULEZ that are in at the moment that no one wants. That's only going to get worse as well. So I'm just trying to say to everyone out there, think about what you're doing. People walk around and say things like, well, it can't get any worse than this. Believe me, it can. And I think under a Labour government, it will.
Danny, you've sent your message loud and clear to everyone. Thanks for kicking off the conversation this morning.